Hello, Dungeon Delvers, and welcome to the Dungeon Directory, your source for all guides, Dungeons and Dragons. Today, we're going to be discussing creating your first character. For a new player, D&D is a hugely overwhelming game to try and learn, from rules to sheets to effects and abilities. There's seemingly a huge mountain of obstacles between you and the amazing game that we all love so much. However, among all these challenges, one stands as the biggest barrier to entry above all else: creating your first character. And that's what I'm going to walk you through today. I'll talk about where to find and download character sheets, how to fill in each box and area, as well as how the boxes interact with each other and can be utilized to make exciting and memorable characters. By the end of this video, you'll have a level 1 character that you'll be able to sit down at a table and play some D&D with. So without further ado, let's delve right in. To begin, you're going to want to navigate to the Wizards of the Coast Dungeons & Dragons website in the Character Sheets tab. A link to the site is going to be in the description. Once you're there, scroll down to where you see Character Sheets. And out of the 4 options, you're going to want to select 5th edition Character Sheet. Just by clicking this button, it's going to start a download with a zipped folder that contains all kinds of different character sheets. I've already downloaded it, so I'm not going to download this, and instead I'll just open up my own file. So once you've clicked the button, this is the file that's going to end up downloading, the 5e character sheets WinRAR zip file. Once you have that, you're going to want to open it up and take a look at the list of character sheets in here. Most of these aren't that important, but there are a few that are. The ones you're looking for are the character sheet fillable form or the character sheet print form. If you plan on doing your character sheet digitally, you'll need the fillable form. If you want to print it out and have a paper copy, then the print form. So whichever one you want, you're going to copy it and paste it somewhere that you can hang on to it. I've made a character folder. I'm just going to paste a new one in here, and I'm going to rename it to a character. The name's irrelevant for now. We'll come up with a better name down the line as we get more invested into our character. So now that we have the first character sheet, when you open it up, it's going to be a little bit intimidating. If you've opted to store your sheet digitally, this is what you'll see when you open your file. If you've opted for a printed character sheet, it should look the same, so all the steps will still apply. Before you begin, I strongly recommend using Acrobat to edit the PDFs. When you first open the PDF, it might default to Internet Explorer, which won't save your work properly, so beware. So, what exactly are we looking at here? This is a 5th edition character sheet for Dungeons & Dragons. It's going to hold all the information about your character. Their stats, items, spells, and everything else will be stored in this sheet. It can look like a lot's going on here, and it might seem challenging for a new player to even know where to begin. So we're going to walk through this page slowly, one section at a time, starting with your basic character info, which can be seen in the top portion of your character sheet. I always recommend starting here because it's going to give you a strong understanding for the theme of your character, as well as what kind of character it's going to be. I always prefer to begin with choosing a class. Your class will most heavily impact your abilities, both in and out of combat. Things like health, skills, attacks, and spells will be determined by your class. You can find this full list of classes on the website D&D Beyond. Again, link in the description. Take your time to read through some of the classes to find one that inspires you, fits your personality, or just sounds like a good time. For this example, I'm going to be using the Druid class, simply because it'll show off how to both set up regular attacks and equipment, as well as spells. Take a minute here to pick a class that sounds good to you, and keep that window open for later. Your race is the next most important step in making your first character. It holds the most sway in your character's core attributes and stats. Things like size, speed, and their bonuses to your stats all come with the race you choose. This is the races page on D&D Beyond. Take a minute here to pick a race that sounds interesting to you, and keep in mind that some races on D&D Beyond might be locked behind a paywall. If the race you want is locked behind a paywall, then feel free to Google the stats. They're pretty easy to find on other websites. For this character, I'm going to be playing a half-elf. Once you pick your race, keep this page open as well. The last key thing we're going to need to do before we start to put pen to paper is to roll out your character's stats. Most Dungeon Masters will allow you to randomly roll your character's stats, but make sure to ask your DM if they have another method they prefer. The most common rolling method is the 4d6 minus 1 method. That simply means you'll roll 4 6-sided dice and remove the lowest roll. Add up the remaining 3 dice, and that'll be one of your character's stats. You'll need to do this 6 times, 1 for each of the 6 stats, and make sure to write down the total so you don't forget. After all that's out of the way, it's finally time to start putting your info onto your character sheet. First, your class at first level, followed by your race, and after that, it's time for stats. For the most part, stats are pretty straightforward in what they do. Strength will determine how well you can wield most weapons, as well as how many chin-ups you can do to flex on peons in the tavern. Dexterity will determine how well you can aim a bow or sneak past a bandit patrol coming towards you down the path. Constitution will increase your hit points, as well as how resistant you are to poisons in harsh environments. Intelligence will determine how book-smart you are, allowing you to think back on historical events with accuracy or identify a type of magic ruin. Wisdom is the closest representation of street smarts and instincts. Wisdom will let you spot a well-camouflaged tiger waiting to attack, or tell if somebody's lying through their teeth. And finally, charisma is your ability to talk your way out of your poor choices. Town's guard wants you in jail? Charisma. Caught stealing from the merchant's coin purse? Charisma. Want to convince an NPC that his cool hat would look way better on you? Charisma. Each class has a main stat, which can be found on the D&D Beyond character classes page. You always want to put your highest rolled number into your main stat, in my case, Wisdom. After that, the choices are up to you, but for most new players, I always recommend putting your second highest rolled number in Constitution, for just a little bit more survivability. We're not quite done with our stats yet. The last thing to do is to add our race bonuses. All races have different stat bonuses. Some are fixed to specific stats, like a Minotaur's bonus to strength, and some are loose, like a Changeling's bonus to one stat of your choice. You can find your race's bonuses by clicking Traits on the left of the D&D Beyond Race tab. In my case, as a half-elf, I get +2 to Charisma and +1 to 2 other stats of my choice. Now that your stats have been entered, we can calculate our modifiers for each stat. Your modifier is the number you'll add to any die rolled using that stat. If it's starting to get a little bit confusing, just hold on and it'll make more sense in a second. You can find the table to calculate your modifiers on page 13 of the Player's Handbook, or take a peek at the chart that's on my screen. To use the chart, look at what number you have in your stat, and the modifier will be next to it. For example, I have an 11 in strength, which means my modifier is a 0. Go through and do this calculation for all 6 of your stats. Next of all, we'll be filling out our skills, saving throws, and proficiency bonus. These will govern any bonuses or negatives that our characters will have when attempting to do something. The first step is to find your proficiency bonus. This can be found on your character class page on D&D Beyond. Simply click the table button on the left and look at the proficiency bonuses column. As you level up, your bonus will go up, but for now, all characters at level 1 start with a +2, so go ahead and put that on your sheet. Next, you'll need to find your class's saving throws. On the same page, click the Features button on the left, and look for the Saving Throws section. All classes have 2 saving throws they're proficient in. Druids are Intelligence and Wisdom. Go ahead and check the circles next to your saving throws on your character sheet. Finally, our skills. In the features area, just under your saving throws, you'll see a list of skills that you can choose to be proficient in. Keep in mind that you'll be able to use every skill, but you'll get larger bonuses to the ones that you pick here. As a druid, I get to pick 2 from the list shown here. I'm going to go ahead and choose my 2, Survival and Insight. Now, you can add your modifiers to your skills and saving throws. For saving throws, simply put the modifier into its corresponding saving throw. The saving throws that you're proficient in, aka the ones with the dots next to them, will also get your proficiency bonus. For example, I have a modifier of 0 in strength, so next to my strength saving throw, I'll put a 0. I have a modifier of +2 to my wisdom, and I'm proficient in wisdom saving throws, thanks to being a druid. That means I'll add my proficiency bonus as well for a total of +4, 2 from my wisdom and 2 from my proficiency. Go through and fill out the rest of your saving throws on your own. After you're done with your saving throws, you'll fill out your skills the same way. Use your modifier for its corresponding stat, and add your proficiency bonus if it applies to the skill. The final thing to calculate is your passive wisdom or passive perception. To calculate this, simply take 10 and add your perception bonus, in my case +2, for a total of 12. Next up, we're going to fill in the area in the top middle of your character sheet. Most of this information can be found on the race and class pages on D&D Beyond. Your initiative to start is simply your dexterity modifier, in my case, 0. Next is speed, which is determined by your race and can be found under the traits tab. Your hit points and hit die are determined by your class and can be found under the class features tab. You'll gain 1 additional hit die every time you level up, starting with 1. You can ignore death saves, armor class, and temporary hit points for now. Next of all, I like to fill in my features and traits. Features come with your class, and traits will come with your race. Both can be found on your respective class and race D&D Beyond page. I'll start with my traits. To find them, click the Traits button on the left, and feel free to summarize these in any way you want to save some space. In my case, I've got a trait that will give me proficiency in 2 of my skills. In this case, I don't need to write that on my sheet. I can simply add my proficiencies, and remember to change the bonuses as well. I've increased my perception skill, which means my passive perception also goes up. At the bottom of your traits, you'll see a races language option. Put them in the box at the bottom left of your character sheet. You can find a full list of languages in the description. I'm done, I'll move over to my features, which can be found sorted by level on your class table. At first level, I get the features Druidic and Spellcasting. You can click on either of these to get sorted down to them further on the sheet. Druidic has a lot of text on it, so I'm going to opt to not add the text on here. I have a general idea of what Druidic does, effectively a secret language for druids. That means I don't need to write down every word that's on here. I'm simply going to write down that it's a secret language for druids, and if I have any questions or concerns about it later, I can always come back and check the page. Finally, we're going to be picking our equipment. Depending on your class, you'll gain proficiency in certain items and weapons. You'll also get to pick some items and weapons to begin your adventure with. Navigate to your class page, and under Class Features, look for Proficiencies. Once you're there, copy and paste the Armor, Weapon, and Tool Proficiency bottom left box of your character sheet. Now that you know what you're proficient in, take a look under the Equipment section and pick one of each of the options. You can find a full list of weapons in the description. Your class gets a pack to begin, like my Explorer's pack. Find the contents of the pack in the description as well. Now, we're getting close to the end of our character sheet. There are only a few steps left to get us ready. Now that we have our weapons, we're going to fill out our attacks area in the center of our character sheet. We'll start by putting our weapon names into the column labeled Name. Once you've inputted your names, you're going to want to navigate to the weapons list that I mentioned earlier. Once you're there, scroll down to the weapon table. This table will tell you all the special properties and damages of every weapon in the game. The next column we're going to fill out is the column labeled Attack Bonus. In this column, we're going to put the modifier of our weapon, which is either Strength or Dexterity, depending on the weapon. Most weapons will use Strength, however, if your weapon has the Finesse property, like a dagger, or a ranged attack like a short bow, you can use Dexterity. If you're proficient in the weapon, then you can add your proficiency bonus as well. Finally is your weapon's damage and damage type, which can be seen in the damage column on the website. So, starting off with my short bow here, as you can see, the short bow deals 1d6 of piercing damage. Alright, 1d6 piercing. Now for your damage, you also get to add your weapon's stat modifier. In this case, I have a 0 in dexterity, so I won't add anything, but I'll still write +0 in case that changes in the future. For my scimitar, it's going to deal 1d6 slashing damage. So I'm going to write 1d6 slashing. As well, I have a +0 in dexterity and strength. This is a finesse weapon, so it could use either. But because it doesn't matter, I'm just going to put a +0 there anyways, meaning both these weapons will deal 1 6-sided die worth of damage plus nothing. Yours might be higher or lower depending on your weapons and stats. The last new thing we can fill in now that we have our equipment is our armor class. As a druid, we get to start with leather armor, and and by navigating to the armor page, again in the description, you'll be able to take a look at all of the armors and their armor classes. If we take a look at leather, we can see that it will give us 11 plus our dexterity modifier. Our dexterity modifier is 0, which means that our armor class will be 11. Your character's personality can be broken down into 4 broad areas of personal traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. These have no impact over your actual character and will only impact your role-playing as them. It's recommended to have 2 personality traits, 1 ideal, 1 bond, and 1 flaw. A personality trait is a simple way of setting your character apart from the pack. The 2 that I picked for my character is that they'll go to great lengths to avoid getting their socks wet and won't sleep on anything but a mattress or bedroll. An ideal is something that drives or motivates your characters, and will usually set up a lot of their morals and principles. My character's ideal is that the world's extras should be given to those who need it. A bond represents a character's connection to the world and its places or people. Consider brainstorming some ideas for your character's background to use as a bond. I've chosen that they're the next in line to warden their family's secret grove. And a flaw represents your character's weakness, maybe a fear or a compulsion, anything that someone could use to bring your character to ruin or to act against their best interest would be considered a flaw. I decided to make mine cannot bring themselves to kill an innocent animal. Feel free to fill yours in now. If you're not sure what to make them, then feel free to use Google for some inspiration as well. The last thing to fill in on your character sheet is back where we began. Your background, your experience, and finally your character name. So your background is the most important part of the 3 that we're going to be covering here, as it will give you all kinds of other bonuses depending on what you pick. There's a link to a list of backgrounds in the description. Feel free to go there and read through some of the backgrounds to pick one that you think would fit your character best. I've already selected the Hermit, so I'm going to be adding all the bonuses that it gives to my character sheet, which is proficiency in medicine and religion. I already have medicine, so we're going to skip that. We'll put a point into religion, and don't forget to change the modifier. I also gain proficiency in the herbalism kit, which I already have, so I won't worry about it. I also get 1 additional language of my choice. I'm going to go with Goblin. As well, I get a couple pieces of equipment. So I'm going to take all of these and copy them into my player sheet. As you can see here, I'm going to be getting my first pieces of currency, that being 5 gold pieces. These will go next to your equipment in your character sheet, under the area labeled GP for gold pieces. The other ones are copper pieces, silver pieces, electrum pieces, which most DMs don't use, and platinum pieces. Now before we get started picking out our spells, we're going to need a spell casting sheet. So if we go back to the original file we downloaded and open that up, you're going to see again the big list of all the different spells. Here we're looking for the spell casting sheet fillable form, or the print form if you're following along on a printed page. So we're going to copy the fillable form and open up our file, and we're going to paste this in here as character 1 spells. Now once we open this up, we're going to see the spell casting sheet. And again, this may seem a little bit weird, but it's pretty simple to follow along with a few basic steps. So the first thing we're going to do is add our spellcasting class. In this case, we're a druid. If you're a warlock or a wizard or a sorcerer, feel free to put that in there. Our spellcasting ability is wisdom as a druid. You can find your spellcasting ability by going to your character class sheet on D&D Beyond and scrolling down to the spellcasting section. Here in the spellcasting section, it's going to give us all the information that we need about our class when it comes to spellcasting. As you can see here, our spellcasting ability is Wisdom, like I mentioned before. So, depending on what yours is, you'll put it in the spellcasting ability slot. For example, warlocks use Charisma, wizards use Intelligence, so on and so forth. Your spell save DC is pretty easy to calculate. just take a look at the little calculation on your class page. You can see that it's 8 plus your proficiency bonus, which if you remember is plus 2, plus your wisdom modifier. So we're going to take a look back at our character sheet. So 8 plus 2 is 10, plus our wisdom modifier is another plus 2, for a total of 12. And our spell attack bonus you can see is simply our proficiency bonus plus our wisdom modifier. In this case, it's going to be plus 4. Now that we have all this information entered in, all we're going to need to do is pick out our spells. At your class table, you're going to see a lot of the information that you need about what spells you know. Now there are two different kinds of spells. There's actual spells, and there's cantrips. Cantrips are regular, small, weak spells that you can cast every turn, whereas spells require spell slots to cast, meaning they're much rarer but usually much more powerful compared to a cantrip. As you can see, I'm going to begin with 2 cantrips known, as well as 2 first level spell slots. So I'll enter that in now. The webpage that I've opened up here is the D&D Beyond spells page. On here, you'll be able to look through every spell in the game filtered by class and level. It's a really helpful tool. So in my case, I'm going to go to Druid, and I'm looking for cantrips here. So I'm going to filter by level to find cantrips. So going through, you can open up each one and pick out ones that you think are neat. If you'll remember, I get to have 2 cantrips to begin with. So I'm going to choose Control Flames, as well as Mending. It's helpful to keep these windows open when you're playing, as it's much faster to refer back to a website to look up your spell's specific abilities compared to trying to write them all down, which would take up a lot of room. Next of all, we're going to pick out our spells, specifically our first level ones. So the first question you need to ask yourself is, how many spells can I have? Your spell slots are not equal to how many spells you get to have, they're only equal to how many you can cast between each rest. So I went back to the Druid page on D&D Beyond, and I found the Preparing and Casting Spells area. So as we dig through here, you can see you choose a number of Druid spells equal to your Wisdom modifier plus your Druid level. So our Wisdom modifier is plus 2, and our Druid level is 1. That means that you know 3 spells. So going back to the spells list, I'm going to come down here for first level spells, and I'm going to look through some of the first level spells. The first spell that I want is Charm Person. The second spell that I'm going to pick is Cure Wounds. And the last spell that I want to pick is Entangle. So, again, it's helpful to keep these windows open when you're playing the game. That way you can quickly refer back to what your spells are and what they do. If you have an ability that you think you'll be using really frequently, like for example, Control Flames, which I'll pull back up. It's going to allow me to move around all kinds of flames. So I can copy this, and if I think I'll be using it frequently, I'll paste it into my attacks and spellcasting. In here, I can add any effects that the spells might happen to have as text underneath or beside it. This is particularly useful for spells that deal damage and that you'll think you'll be casting very frequently on each turn. That way you don't have to refer back to your spell sheet on every single turn. If you've made it this far into the video, then congratulations. Your character is ready to begin its adventure. If you found this video helpful, then please subscribe to the channel for more weekly D&D guides. If you have a topic that you'd like a guide on, feel free to leave it in the comments section down below and I'll take a look at it. Thanks for watching.